And as we go into Columbus Circle, if you look to your left, you'll see the front of this Time Warner building, which is really an amazing kind of building. Unlike any of the architecture we have in New York, because this building looks more like one of those buildings you would see in Hong Kong, or if you've ever been to Shanghai, the building lights up at night and changes colors and everything. As we come into Columbus Circle, you get a good view of it. There are two towers. There's a Mandarin Hotel located in the tower on the right. Have a gorgeous lobby, great place to have a drink on the 39th floor overlooking Central Park. Also between the two towers is the Lincoln Center Jazz Theater, which is the only theater in New York dedicated to jazz. Wynton Marsalis is the president of it. It's run by Lincoln Center. There's also a great nightclub there called Dizzy's, which is like one of the greatest jazz nightclubs I've ever been in. It's absolutely gorgeous. The sound is incredible, but the stage is in front of a picture window that overlooks Central Park. It's really a great venue if you want to go see some music. And it's really not a rip-off in terms of the price. It's kind of like really fair price, so I recommend it. Anyway, as we come around Columbus Circle, on the right-hand side of the bus is Central Park, which Seinfeld fans know was designed by Joe Pepitone, the Yankee first baseman, according to Kramer. This is last week they just did the marathon. These are still bleachers from the marathon. The marathon runners enter the park over here and race to the finish line, as was depicted in an episode of Seinfeld, where Jean-Paul, the marathon runner, was about to win the New York Marathon. When he reached out to Kramer, who he thought was a cool cup of water, turned out to be scalding hot tea, causing him to lose the marathon. Now, a number of other things happened here in Central Park. This is where Kramer had the horse and buggy that he fed the horse beefarino and stuff his parents out of the back seat. This is where you see the wall surrounding Central Park here. The whole perimeter of Central Park has this wall that looks like this. That wall was recreated in California in an episode where Kramer is being chased by the cable guy and climbs over the wall and runs through Central Park to escape him. Now, the whole show is filmed in LA. The only time the cast came to New York to film was when Jerry came to be with Brian Gumbel on the Today Show. Excuse me, when he had the puffy shirt. When Kramer had the coffee table book about coffee tables, came to Regis and Kathy Lee. But the rest of the time it's all filmed in LA. Now there are times when you see Kramer running around New York. That's not actually Michael Richards. It's a buddy of mine named Jack Lucino, plays Kramer from behind. And he doesn't like me to mention he can play him from the side also. You should think he's got some range. If you look out to your right, there are 4 baseball fields out there.
Central Park.
Excuse me, and those 4 baseball diamonds, that's where the Broadway Show League plays slow pitch softball all summer. And the Broadway Show League is comprised of Broadway shows at all field teams. In the early days of the Show League, there used to be an improv team. And that was depicted on Seinfeld, when Jerry and George are playing on the improv team against Bette Midler's team from that fabulous show, Rochelle, the story of a girl's travels from Milan to Minsk.
Another Jay Bruner card?
Anyway, the improv team was a bunch of comics having a good time. You missed your left here. It's okay. What are we going to do?
Okay, well, we can take another left right here.
I'm sorry, you were right.
Okay, Kareem is wrong. West 63rd Street, we're turning right here.
63rd Street, that's the left. The team was comprised of a bunch of comics that lost all the time because nobody took it seriously except Larry, who'll be cursing at umpires and throwing his bat. Some of the guys on the team, Bob Waller, you know, is Arliss, and Joe Piscopo, and
Nice move telling me to hang it up on the clock.
That was mine, right? We're heading towards Lincoln
This is the
Center
West
now.
Side Y. This is where Jerry and George first ran into Keith Hernandez. This is where Kramer came to take shower notes.
Is on the right?
And trying to improve the showering technique. You want to put that up here, maybe?
No, almost. I'll keep it on my lap.
Okay. The improv team, one guy on the improv team actually made it into a game of the World Series. His name was Mike Sergio. For 12 years he pitched slow pitch softball, made it into a game of the World Series, and I'll have proof of that for you in a minute. But as we turn right here, see if we can make this light. Thank you. Oh, we're not going to make it. That's okay. No, don't force it. Sergio pitched slow pitch softball for the improv. For 12 years, he was the pitcher, and he made it into a game of the World Series, and I'm going to have proof of that for you guys in a minute. But right now, when we turn right here on the left-hand side of the bus, you'll see Lincoln Center, which is New York's cultural showplace. It's comprised of a number of theaters, Lincoln Center, but 3 of the main theaters are on this main plaza that you'll see when we turn left. There's a fountain, and to the left of the fountain is the New York State Theater where the ballet performs. To the right of the fountain is Avery Fisher Hall where the Philharmonic performs. And behind the fountain is the Metropolitan Opera House, which coincidentally was in an episode of Seinfeld, an episode called The Beard. Now, a beard is someone who's cover, like it covers your face, but a beard is someone who covers for somebody. And Elaine was a beard for this gay guy who wanted his boss to think he was straight. So she brought Elaine as his supposed heterosexual date. And even though he was gay, Elaine had quite a crush on him and decided that she could have him switch teams. But Jerry had a reminder that his team doesn't like to switch because they like to play with their own equipment. And they have access to it all the time. So that happened at the Metropolitan Opera House. Now coming up on the right, there's another missing location. On the next corner, it's called Brown Harris now, but that used to be O'Neill's, a restaurant, and that was the very restaurant where the cast was sitting when the low talker convinced Jerry to wear the puffy shirt. That happened right over there at O'Neill's. And as we go through the next intersection, down the block on the left-hand side is the Juilliard Theatre. That's where Jerry was sitting with George and Elaine, watching George's girlfriend, the concert pianist, giving a recital. And it was during this recital that Jerry thought it would be cute to take this Tweety Bird Pez dispenser and put it on Elaine's knee. Elaine responds by thinking this is the funniest thing she's ever seen in her life, and starts laughing and screaming hysterically. And, you know, in this quiet concert, you know, where she's playing this Beethoven sonata, you know, and Elaine has to get up and leave the concert laughing out loud all the way out the door. Now, in this episode, George was very excited about this girlfriend because he felt that he was finally in a relationship where he had control of the relationship. He had the upper hand. He was all excited. He said, Jerry, this is the first time I got a girlfriend where I'm the guy who's got hand. I got the hand. But when she found out it was his friend that disrupted her concert, he dumped George, and he couldn't believe it. He said, you can't dump me. I have hand. He said, good thing, because you'll be using it. All right. As we pass through the next intersection also, they're doing construction. They have it on the left-hand side of the bus. That is Alice Tully Hall. Now, Alice Tully Hall was donated to New York by Alice Tully, one of New York's great philanthropists. And as the story goes, when they were building Lincoln Center, they came to Alice Tully for a contribution. She said, I'll put up all the money you need for an entire concert hall, but on one condition. I just hate it when I go to a concert and I'm sitting there and somebody has arrived late, so everybody in the row has to stand up to let them get through. I'll pay for an entire concert hall on the condition there's enough leg room that if you're sitting in your seat and somebody has to get into your row, you wouldn't have to move. I'm 6'2" and there's like 2 feet between my knee and the seat in front of me. It's the most spacious concert hall in New York City. It has 1,200 seats. It was built like a normal concert hall, it would have at least 1,500 seats. On the left-hand side of the bus, the Pottery Barn. Home store, very aggressive with their catalogs. Slip them under your door. Pissed off Kramer so much he sealed his mailbox so as not to get Pottery Barn catalogs. Left-hand side, Victoria's Secret, another missing location. Used to be the Regency Theatre. That's where Jerry was busted for making out during that romantic comedy Schindler's List. That's right, that happened there. Next location is missing too, but I'll show you where it was. This is where Kenny Rogers Roasters used to be located. Remember an episode called The Red Planet? This Kenny Rogers was the inspiration for that episode. When they first opened up, they had a big red sign saying Kenny Rogers Roasters, and it was on top of the store, shining into the window of a guy upstairs, a lawyer named Aaron Lichtman. This red light shining in his window was making him crazy. So he asked the manager of Kenny Rogers to please turn it off. And the manager says, listen, you know, you should understand freedom of speech is a legal sign. It stays. Goodbye, good luck, go practice law. So the lawyer went upstairs, made a sign of his own, hung it out the window, and his sign said, the chicken below sucks. When Kenny Rogers manager asked him to take down the sign, he said, freedom of speech, go sell chicken. Kenny Rogers sues the lawyer. The case comes up. The judge rules that he's not defaming or slandering, but merely expressing an opinion, which is his right to do. Kenny Rogers lost the case. Upon them losing the case, they modified the sign so it shouldn't shine in his windows. That would have been the end of that, except the New York Times did a big story about it. And when the Seinfeld was in production, every morning the writers used to get all the New York newspapers looking for story ideas. A writer saw the idea of this story about Kenny Rogers, changed a few things. If you look to your left, it's now called Gigi's Cafe. Kenny Rogers is long gone. After that, it was a Chinese takeout place called Rice Ball. Now it's Gigi's Cafe. The law office of Aaron Lichtman is gone. It's now the Epic Security Company. But that was the location of the place that was the inspiration for that episode. For those of you who have the DVDs, you'll see the original Kenny Rogers located there with the law office of Aaron Lichtman upstairs. Now, I was telling you a few minutes ago that there was one player on the improv team who actually made it into a game of the World Series. His name was Mike Sergio. For 12 years, he pitched slow-pitch softball for the Improvisation Comedy Club. He made it into the World Series, and proof of that now in video. Any Boston Red Sox fans here today? Huh? No? Okay, because they don't like this video. Mike Sergio makes it into the World Series.
There's a gentleman coming in, parachuting in, lands right along the first base line just about. And this is famous, and there he is, parachutes into the, I remember watching this live. The police are taking him out to the dugout. Looks like the Mets dugout. He's high-fiving somebody sitting there.
Well, he took the expression, why did you drop by, literally and figuratively. That's about the only way
Stadium, Yankee Stadium, I'm sorry, Shea Stadium is packed. This is 1986 Mets, Boston Red Sox World Series, the famous 6th inning. Mookie Wilson in the 6th inning. And it says, "Go Mets." It's a yellow parachute.
So there Sergio went directly from the Mets dugout to jail, where he remained for 27 days.
Wow.
Yeah, the judge was going to let him go. He said, you know, I'm going to turn you loose and dismiss this case against you on one condition. Before you leave my courtroom, I want to know the name of that pilot that let you jump out of an airplane over Shea Stadium. Sergio says, Your Honor, I flew there myself. So the judge says, well, I'm holding you in contempt of court. You could sit in jail till you tell me that name. And Mike would have spent the rest of his life in jail. Ended up being rescued by our own Senator Alphonse D'Amato, a guy who knows how to keep out of jail himself pretty good. And he got Mike turned loose. But that was the game with the Boston Red Sox. Were one strike away from winning the World Series. When the ground ball that should have been out 3 rolled through the legs of the first baseman, Bill Buckner, was hit by Mookie Wilson and changed the course of history. All right. Coming up in a couple of blocks, see, we're going to pass one of New York's premier comedy clubs. It's called Stand Up New York. This is the club that Jerry might walk in at any part time and do a set because he lives just a few blocks from here. Chris Rock is in there all the time. Every night is just a hilarious show. And the guy who owns it is a buddy of mine. And Kerry Hoffman is his name. You might know him. He does, you watch PBS. He also does a Sinatra show himself. But he owns this club, Stand Up New York. So we go through the intersection. You'll see it's right over here on the right on 78th Street and Broadway. Well, Kerry's done a special deal because going to this club costs $20 and a 2-drink minimum. But I have these passes that say if you've been on the Kramer Tour, they'll waive the cover charge. So the 2 seats are free. You just have a 2-drink minimum if you go there. At the end of the tour, I'll give out these passes, but I promise if you go there, it's hilarious. You'll laugh your ass off all night long. And the tickets are not just good for tonight, they're good for just about any time. So all you have to do is call, make a reservation, tell them you're on the Kramer Tour, and they will honor that. Right over there, as you can see, Stand Up New York.
My daughter played there.
Your
She
daughter
did
played
stand
there.
up
She
there.
did.
Yeah,
What's
she
her name?
did. Peterson. Kim Peterson.
Kim Peterson, how about that?
Yeah, she did stand up there.
Really?
Right there, yeah.
Poor
yeah.
thing.
All right.
As we go to this next intersection, Champagne Video is over there. It's hard to see, but that's the place where Elaine had a crush on a guy who worked there named Vincent, who picked out the great movies, and Elaine went to Vincent's house with some vodka, some fireworks, some cigarettes. Vincent's a 14-year-old with acne. Also, Champagne Video is pivotal in an episode where Susan dumps George to become a lesbian. And George finds this out because he walks into Champagne Video with Kramer, runs into Susan, who introduces them to her lover, Mona, who, of course, Kramer ends up stealing from Susan. Because, as you know, George sends women to lesbianism, Kramer brings them back, okay? A characterization I've never denied. But this actually happened to Larry. He was dating this waitress at the Improv for several months until she dumped him and announced that she's now a lesbian. In fact, Larry wrote a joke about it that was in his act. And the joke from his act, he took that joke and gave the line to George in an episode of Seinfeld. It was the episode where Elaine is on her way to be the best man at a lesbian wedding. She tells George where she's going to be the best man at a lesbian wedding, and George says, you know, lesbians frighten me. Because every time I see a lesbian, I think they're pointing at me saying, that's why I'm not heterosexual. that was a joke from Larry's act. The cast which goes to the hospital a lot, the next most likely place we find them is at the movies. And the movie they usually go to is right over here. It used to, when you see it on Seinfeld, it's the it's the Sony 84th Street Cinema, but Lowe's bought it and changed the marquee. But this is the theater where Kramer got mustard on Elaine's jacket. This is where Elaine was on her way to meet Jake Jarmel when the manager told her that Jake was hit by a car and that she go rushing to the hospital. No, she stops first to buy juicy fruits and popcorn. This is also in an episode called Worlds Collide. George is doing everything the opposite from now on. And when these guys are making noise in the theater behind him, he tells them to shut up or we're taking this into the street. This is also the very same theater where a very pivotal episode is an episode called, Worlds Collide was the episode I'm thinking of. The episode I just described to you was an episode called The Opposite. In Worlds Collide, George is getting very uptight because his fiancée Susan is becoming friends with his friends. And he's very uptight about that because he feels if his fiancée becomes friends with his friends, he's going to lose independent George. And you know, he finds out that his fiancée Susan went to the movies with his friends, and he decides he got to be there, you know, to join them. So he knows what movie they went to see, but what he doesn't know is that he doesn't realize it's at a multiplex theater and the same movie's playing on a few different screens. So he's in front of the wrong screen screaming for Susan until somebody says, "You jerk, she's probably in the theater next door." Well, that was the voice of Larry David. Larry has done a lot of cameos on Seinfeld, and I'll tell you about some of these, so the next time you see these episodes, you'll get a kick out of knowing it's Larry. For instance, there's an episode where Frank Costanza's getting divorced, represented by a very mysterious lawyer, the man in the cape. That is, of course, Larry David. Or there's an episode in which Russell Dalrymple, the president of NBC, quits NBC to join Greenpeace to impress Elaine, who hates television, ends up drowning at sea as he's drowning at sea on the life raft. Guy in the yellow rain jacket, "I'll go to New York, find that Elaine bonus, tell her you gave your life for Greenpeace." That too is Larry David. There's an episode where George is dressed as King Henry VIII and goes to buy something at a newsstand, and the news dealer says, "I can't accept this 20, Your Majesty. There's lipstick on it." That's also Larry. Jerry has a dream about the man in space and the silver spacesuit. That's also Larry. Larry's done a lot of voices on Seinfeld, like for instance when Kramer's running into a bathroom looking for a bathroom in Rockefeller Center, runs into a restaurant, the voice says, "You can't come in here, this is for customers only." That's the voice of Larry. On an airplane you might hear Larry yelling, "I ordered a kosher meal." One of my favorites is Larry is the voice that asks that magical question, "Is there a marine biologist here?" That's Larry. And in fact, Larry got the last word on Seinfeld when Jerry's doing stand-up in prison. He's being heckled. "You suck, Seinfeld, I'm going to cut you." That's who is Larry David. But Larry's most famous and reoccurring role on Seinfeld is the voice of George Steinbrenner. That's right.
Jay Bruner.
Yeah. The voice of George Steinbrenner. Which is how ironic is that? Because Larry was plotting Steinbrenner's assassination, gets to assassinate him on national television. But the Yankees do love the association because they had to give permission to depict George as a Yankee employee because they used the Yankee logo and they used shots of Yankee Stadium. But the Yankees did love that association. They're big fans of the show. In fact, over the years, Paul O'Neill was on the show. Several Yankee players have been on the show.
Tartable.
Who else? Danny Tartable, right, yes, that's right.
Bernie Williams.
Buck Showalter was on.
Bernie Williams.
Bernie Williams was
Jeter.
on. Derek Jeter.
Yeah.
So anyway, but you know, a friend of mine is the director of public relations for the New York Yankees. He told me something that's really quite amazing, and actually it's a little bit frightening, but this is the truth. On a regular basis, to this day, Yankee Stadium receives mail from all around the world addressed to George Costanza. So, there are really people out there that need to get lives. Yeah.